Before we get into the video, do not forget to like, comment and subscribe. So a three-man gang has been jailed for almost 30 years after a man was subjected to torture practices over a prolonged period of time. That's more than 7 hours. And in those 7 hours, he was burned with iron, he was stabbed more than once, and he was blindfolded and punched repeatedly. Remy Burgess, Lewis Winstanley, who's only 20 years old, and Dominic McGrath had met up with the victim, and the victim was trying to sell one of them a Rolex watch over social media. This took place in December 2020. Now, after agreeing a price of $4,000, Remy Burgess arranged to meet the victim at his workplace at a garage. Now, maddeningly enough, the three-man gang actually came with the cash. As the victim sat in their car and counted the money, Bolton Crown Court was told that Dominic McGrath headbutted the victim, throwing him off balance, before they dragged him into the car and then sped off. Remy Burgess then stabbed the victim in the hand with a flick knife, while McGrath stabbed the victim in the leg. They essentially wrapped the victim in a false sense of security, then they attacked him and then kidnapped him. While the victim was repeatedly punched and his arms and hands were twisted in ways that weren't meant to be twisted, the three-man gang laughed and joked about snapping his arms as they drove along the M6. When the car finally stopped, a fourth man, who has not been named, came out and taped the victim's eyes shut so he could not see the location he had arrived at, in Norwood Drive, Timperley. His hands were also taped behind his back and a hood was put over his head. And then, once the victim was upstairs, his legs were taped together, and again he was repeatedly punched, kicked and taunted. Now, during the sickening ordeal, the victim had his jaw broken in 2 places. He was also stabbed, and again, as I mentioned, he was also burnt with an iron. And they told him, as plain as day, they would kill him. Now, just because the victim had nice things, such as a Rolex watch, and his family were hard-working individuals and working-class people, these 3 thugs phoned the victim's brother and demanded £100,000 cash, or says that his little brother would be killed. For good measure, they then phoned the victim's dad and demanded more money. However, the police had already been called and the victim's brother had negotiated a $20,000 ransom. So when the money was handed over, police already lay in wait and arrested Remy, Dominic and Lewis. All 3 men pleaded guilty to false imprisonment and wounding with intent. As for these 3 idiots' defences, one said he turned to crime because he dropped out of school at 15, and Lewis said he was only 19 at the time of the crime and he was immature. Winstanley received a custodial sentence of 12 years, McGrath was jailed for 9 years, and Burgess was imprisoned for 8 years. All I can say is serves their rights. Stay safe.